Today we'll be introducing a new chapter, Chapter 2, and it's going to talk about writing about sense, details, and feelings. Now what we mean by that is the situation where you're asked to write something, write about something you feel, or you sense. And of course, when we talk about the five senses, you can either have taste, smell, sound, feeling, and vision. All of these senses can be described in a way. Let's say that you want to describe something that you see, and that happens. What you see happens to be colorful, happens to be bright, happens to be gloomy, happens to be dark, happens to be in a triangular shape, or a square shape, or a circle shape. So the things you see are numerous and various. So you need a set of vocabulary in order to help you out in describing many kinds of situations. The same goes for the things that you probably taste. You might taste something and you find it salty or bitter or sweet. Some things that you taste, either food or drink, you might find pleasant or you might find unpleasant. So in that situation, if you were in that situation and you needed to express those ideas, you would need a set of vocabulary to help you out. Now, that's the basic idea of the introduction we're going to use today for Chapter 2, because that's the focus in this chapter. Now, if you think of things you can see, hear, touch, taste, and smell, what would they be? Let's see. When it comes to see, things can be colorful, like I said, bright, cramped, gloomy. When you hear something, something can be noisy. When you touch something, when you feel something with your fingers, with your hands, they can be soft, they can be smooth, they can be rough. And when you taste something, it could be salty, spicy, bitter, sour, foul. A foul is something unpleasant to the taste. Also, when you smell something, something can be pleasant, something can be nice, and also can be rotten and foul. So you can see foul can be a taste, a description of taste, and also a description of smell. Foul is a very unpleasant smell or unpleasant description of something. So these sets of words are actually talking about senses. You know, things you can see, hear, touch, taste, and smell. But we don't just say see, hear, touch, taste, and smell. We can also describe the sense. We can also describe what we are seeing. We can describe what we're touching or feeling. So in seeing, you can use colorful, bright, cramped, gloomy, noisy for hearing something. Also, when you touch something, things can be soft, smooth, rough. Taste, salty, spicy, bitter, sour, and foul, and rotten and foul for the smell. Now, these are not the only descriptions for these five senses, of course. No, there are many other descriptions as well, many other adjectives that the English language full of, but this is just a set of examples. So, if we go to a reading passage on page 26 that we would like to look at together today, we will get a sense of what I was just talking about. Now, on page 26, you have a reading passage with the title, My Neighborhood. Now, notice that the directions say, identifying descriptive words and phrases. What you're supposed to do is read the following paragraph, notice the effect the details have on the writing, underline the descriptive words and phrases. Now, what we're trying to do here is identify the words that contain the details, the fine descriptions, and that's what we'll try to do. But let's read the paragraph together first. So, the paragraph begins by the title, My Neighborhood, and it goes on, my neighborhood is fascinating. And that's a first description. That's why you find a line under the word fascinating. My neighborhood is fascinating because people from all over the world live in it. When I walk down the main street of my neighborhood, I can hear the unfamiliar sounds of languages from all over the world. Each ethnic group has its own colorful shop or fascinating restaurant. Now, notice colorful and fascinating, giving us some description details. On a warm evening as well, a warm evening, the author or the writer didn't just say on the evening or in the evening. He gave you or she gave you a description of what the evening feels like when it feels warm. So on a warm evening, I can smell the sweet melons from the Korean produce store and the spicy curries from the Indian restaurant. So the author or the writer is talking about smell. She's writing about smell, the sense of smell. So it gives, the writer gives a description of I can smell the sweet melons. So notice the use of sweet melons that kind of give you a sense that this is a pleasant smell, right? It's not a bad smell. It's a very pleasant smell, something appealing to the person who smells it. It's not a bad smell, no, it's a very good smell. So the writer uses the word sweet, the sweet melons. You can smell the sweet melons from the Korean produce store and the spicy curries. So if you hear the word spicy, that means that there's a sense to this food that it's probably good. It tastes good. And that's why she used spicy, the word spicy. So if you're hungry, you might even feel like going and eating Indian food after reading this. Right. These smells are free, but for a small price. These smells are free, but for a small price, I can also buy any of 50 kinds of cheeses with strange names from one store, or exotic Asian vegetables and the spices to cook them in from another. The people of the neighborhood take pride in their surroundings. On almost every street, they plant trees and flowers from their native countries. On almost every street, they plant trees and flowers from their native countries to remind them of home and to brighten up the dull gray cement and run-down apartment buildings. One of my neighbors plants delicate Scottish flowers. Delicate Scottish flowers gives you a sense that they're fragile, they're small. From the word delicate, you can understand that these flowers are huge, big, medium flowers. No, they're very nice and small flowers, and supposedly beautiful. So yeah, one of my neighbors plants delicate Scottish flowers every year in memory of her mother's garden in Scotland. Another neighbor has a Chinese vegetable garden in window boxes. I don't need to buy an airplane ticket to experience the world. A walk around my neighborhood can be just as exciting. So, this reading passage is on page 26. Now, after that, after we're done with the reading passage, there is a exercise 8 on page 26, and it goes into page 27. In this exercise, you're supposed to match words to their definitions. So find words or phrases in the paragraph above, the paragraph we just read, that mean the following. So it gives you a set of definitions that and they ask you to find the word that is that corresponds to that definition. So you see the first word says strange and unusual. The word for that in the reading passage is exotic. Okay? Now, the solution to these definitions is on this slide. And the first one is strange and unusual. Of course, we said exotic. Number 2, small and pretty. And that would be delicate. The word delicate. Very interesting. That would be fascinating. To make pretty, to make beautiful, is to brighten up. Sad looking, number 5. Sad looking, dull gray. 6, to be proud of, take pride in. So, what do we mean by this? It's just saying that the words here are another way of saying the words here. So instead of saying strange and unusual, you can easily say exotic. And instead of saying small and pretty, you could say delicate. Instead of saying very interesting, you can say fascinating. Instead of saying to make pretty, you can say brighten up. Sad looking, dull and gray. To be proud of, another way of saying it is take pride in. Okay? Now, you were asked to look at these two photographs on page 27. Right. As you can see, in these two paragraphs, you have two pictures of two different places. One of them is supposed to be in Hong Kong, and the other is supposed to be a village in Europe somewhere. And you were asked kind of to look at those two photos and see if you can describe what you feel from looking at those photos. What you see, what you hear, what you smell, what you taste, and what you feel, just from taking your ideas from the photos. This is on page 26. Now, I've tried to answer these questions myself, and I've also used some of the responses from previous students, and I thought, you know, I would include them here as well. So, what can you see? And we're talking about the Hong Kong's neighborhoods are lively, the picture or the photo that represents Hong Kong. So what do you see? One response could be, I can see the street. It's crowded. So I think the student who used crowded was correct, and he or she did a good job in choosing a very relevant word. So crowded. If you can think of another word other than crowded, that would be fantastic. What can you hear? You can, well, a response would be, I can hear car horns. So the student who responded to this one, and they are very noisy. That's very good, because he probably or she probably saw the street and saw a lot of cars or street cars and a lot of people, and they assumed that there would be a lot of car horns, and I think that's kind of interesting and accurate. What can you smell? So this student would have to use his or her imagination in responding to this, because of course you can't see, of course, or hear. But smell is kind of difficult. I mean, you couldn't hear the horns, but you can imagine them because you can see all of those cars. But smell, you kind of need to be more creative, and what you can smell, I can smell some smoke coming out of cars. It's foul. Well, that's a very interesting observation. Indeed, there are a lot of cars, and you would expect a lot of smoke coming out of the cars, and you would expect the smell to be foul. Indeed, what you can taste. Another, you need some more imagination, and the response here was, I can taste some famous foods from Hong Kong. They are very spicy, assuming that Hong Kong food is spicy. What you can feel, I can feel the warmth the sun is very bright. Of course, we can't see, and it's probably warm. I don't know, but and then again, the student probably used her or his sense of imagination and creativity, and I think the answer is not bad. Right. So yeah, from just looking at a photo, you were able to answer these questions. Through using some of the words that give you description and detail that make your topic interesting. Right. Now the village in Europe, the same thing, but we're going to do this quickly. What you can see, well, one student said, I can see the colorful houses with the gorgeous small plants boxes. Well, there was a mistake here. There shouldn't be plants. Should be plant boxes. What you can hear, I can hear a woman singing while she waters the plants. So obviously a lot of students focused on the plants, which are so obvious in the street, in the photo, so they were probably thinking that there is there is an interest of plants in this village. What you can smell, this is a very interesting response I got. I can smell the grass and a freshly baked cherry pie. Now this is being very creative, and I really like this example, and that's why I included it here. What you can taste, I can taste the berries I just picked from the tree, assuming that there are trees that have berries. But then again, a very, very nice and pleasant response that I very much liked, and I included. And what you can feel, I can feel the soft, cool wind. This is very, very nice. This is very nice. So thank you for the students who responded to this. These were previous students, not students among you. And I chose their answers to include in the lecture just to make things interesting. Right. Now let's go over again before we say thank you and goodbye. The basic idea up to now, and the basic idea in this chapter as a whole, is to use as much detail as possible. And what we mean by detail is description detail. So when you have a situation in your surrounding, you would use as much description in your composition or paragraph to make it clear to the reader what you're talking about. And that helps a lot. First of all, it helps that it makes the reader it helps the reader not to get bored quickly from reading your paragraph or composition. That's very important to put in mind. And the more, let's say, sound, color, smell, and feeling you put in your composition, the more your composition becomes more interesting to the reader, and not just some boring piece of writing. Right. Now, we're going to stop at page 27, and we're going to continue from page 28 onwards in chapter 2. It would be nice if you guys can prepare the next set of exercises as we will go through them in the next lecture. Thank you very much.